good morning. It's another spectacular day down in Dorset. You could be forgiven for thinking I live a charmed life, but I don't. I just pick the best days, I think, when I come out walking. And yes, we're out on another walk today, and it could be a walk with a bit of deja vu. If you watched my previous video, we are kind of in the same vague area, certainly following some of the same features. The sign behind me gives away where we are. It's a sign which tells us all about Ackling Dyke. And we've actually started, we're actually in the Gussage Valley. I've started from Gussage All Saints, beautiful little village. Just done a little bit of road walking to reach this point. And I'm going to join Ackling Dyke. Now, the last video I followed part of Ackling Dyke, but that was several miles, quite a few miles east of here. So this is a more westerly part of Ackling Dyke, and we're going to join that to start our walk. It actually goes over there, so we're going to head up that way. We're going to head east. So I hope you're going to join me. It promises to be a wonderful day again, and I will tell you more about the route as we walk. Sorry about the shadow. I can't get my shadow out of the picture. But this is the board that tells us about Ackling Dyke. It was built 55 AD or before 55 AD, and it was part of a road that ran from Exeter all the way to London. Ackling Dyke itself actually runs from Badbury Rings in the western end to Old Sarum in the eastern end, and I think Ackling Dyke is 22 miles long, is it? But the sign says that there's a best preserved section just 1 mile into our walk. Sorry, in fact it says half a mile into our walk, so we'll look out for that and see what that looks like. Anyway, so this is Ackling Dyke. It crosses the road that runs through the Gussage Valley. So up the hill there is the bit of Ackling Dyke that heads towards Badbury Rings. We are actually going to walk up this part of it, which is the part that heads towards Old Sarum. Although we're not going to walk that far. But there's lots of interest on this walk again. In terms of the route today, I will put up a map at this point so that you can follow me. We are following Ackling Dyke up onto the top of Harley Down. At that point I'll take a detour to Gussage Hill, because it's a good viewpoint and there's some interesting things there to look at before we retrace our steps to Harley Down again, and then head across to another lovely village, Wimborne St Giles, and then from Wimborne St Giles we'll be heading back along a couple of lovely tracks back to Gussage All Saints, and we will finish the walk by walking all through the village of Gussage, which is a village I love. It's a really pretty village, some lovely cottages, well maintained. It's a lovely village, and that will take us back to the car. And the last thing we'll look at is going to be Gussage All Saints Church, but more about that later. That's the route. It should be probably around 9 miles, not sure, might get into double figures, I don't know, depends on the detours. But about halfway round, we'll be visiting something which is kind of close to my heart, and which I've got a kind of personal involvement with. So I'm interested to visit that again, but I'll hold you in suspense. I'll tell you more about that when we get there, but I'm looking forward to looking at that. So if you watched my last video, which was in the Pentridge area, right on the eastern border of Dorset, you'll know that Ackling Dyke is probably the best preserved Roman road in the whole of England, and apparently the best part is just up here. Don't remember it. I've walked this path numerous times, so I have probably seen it, but I can't actually remember much about it. But Roman roads were amazing feat of engineering. When you think about it, there are hundreds of miles of these roads, all going virtually in a straight line. They were paved, large stones, smaller stones on top of that, gravel on top of that, ditches down each side. They were raised. In places, the Ackling Dyke is up to 6 feet, raised up to 6 feet. Ackling Dyke in particular is 50 feet wide in places, in an effort by the Romans to kind of impress the locals, I suppose, and establish their importance. But yeah, 22 miles long, stretching from Badbury Rings to Old Sarum, two Roman settlements, and part of a much longer complex of roads. So we are walking in the feet of Romans at this moment. Just imagine hundreds of Roman legionaries, is that what we call them? Soldiers, marching along here. Must have been quite a sight. So I think this must be the best preserved part that the notice board was talking about, and I do remember coming here before because I was never quite sure if I was in the right place, but I'm about half a mile from the sign. Roman roads consisted of, they were raised up, as I said, and I think they called it the Agger. So I think this must be the part, although it's overgrown, I think this must be the part where the Agger is still in evidence. And I think that's probably what they mean by better, the best preserved part. Although if the sign hadn't been there, I confess I'd have walked past it and not really even given it a thought. I guess you do get a feel for its width though. This was a particularly wide Roman road. That's where we've just come from, and the Roman road we saw earlier across the other side of the road goes up over the ridge in the distance. It's very peaceful here, I have to say. So interestingly, this raised part has been mown. It's more than half a mile from the sign, it's a mile or so, but I wonder if this is the part they were meaning, and whether this is in fact the Agger. You can see it's raised up quite a lot. So maybe this is the raised bit and somebody's got their measurements a bit out. So I'm literally walking in the footsteps of Romans. Another heavy raised section there as well. Look at this glorious weather. Wonderful sky. So we've reached the top of Harley Down and a crossroads. So Ackling Dyke continues straight on. Our route takes us that way towards Wimborne St Giles, but I'm going to detour and I'm going to walk along the top of Harley Down, which is this way. But before we do that, there's one interesting thing, or it intrigues me anyway, and this, incidentally, if I go back, I think is probably where the Roman road is as well. You can see the hump, but it's this little memorial, John Ironmonger, 1919 to 1986, which is on Ackling Dyke, basically on Harley Down in the middle of nowhere. Now I have looked at this before actually, but I don't think I turned up anything as to who John Ironmonger was and why he's got a memorial that's actually cut into the agger of Ackling Dyke. But when I get home I might try again, see if I can find anything else about him, because I'm intrigued to know who he is and why did he have a memorial on Harley Down at Harley Gap, I think this is actually called, in the middle of nowhere. So there's nothing around here, so I'll have to Google that and see what I can find out. Meantime, let's take our detour along the ridge. Some lovely views from along this ridge, and interestingly, in the distance, I don't know if it will come out on the video, you can see some lines going across diagonally left to right in the distance, and I think that is the Dorset Cursus. Now I talked about the Dorset Cursus in my previous video, and the fact that its evidence of it is effectively hidden because it's with centuries of ploughing and crop growing and erosion and so on, all evidence of the Cursus is virtually gone, but sometimes it reveals itself through the crops. And you can see lines of where the Cursus was, and I think that's what that is over there. So I described the Dorset Cursus in my last video as a kind of grand avenue, processional come celebratory come religious avenue between groups of burial mounds. It is 10 kilometers long and 80 to 90 meters wide, or was, with ditches and banks along each side. Purpose is really not known, but it's thought to be processional. There are other cursuses. There's one near Stonehenge, a shorter one, which is also kind of processional, leading to the henge. This one is much longer than that, and it was built in two halves. I'm at the Gussage Cursus end now. In the previous video I was at the Pentridge Cursus end, and you can actually see where I was last time. There's a clump of trees right in the distance, which is Penbury Knoll. So that's where I was walking in my previous video. And the Cursus goes through the cornfield, where you can just see some evidence of it. It'd be better if the corn was out and visible from the air. But yeah, I can put up a bit of footage from the air, because my son Paul put his drone up, and you can see the Cursus in the drone imagery. This is a lovely ancient place, wonderful views, and there's just so much history along here. And yes, there's lots of ancient, there's an ancient settlement off to the right of this track. It's an enclosure, an earthworks, which was a settlement, but there are lots of burial mounds, round barrows, etc. along here. We've obviously got the Cursus, we've got the Roman Road in Ackling Dyke where we've just been. There's just so much ancient history. And I'm no expert on ancient history, I'm not big on that subject, but it intrigues me more, I think, because the people, I think, who were they, what were they doing, why were they here, what were they like walking along here? If you met one of them, would he stab you, or would he shake your hands and welcome you? Just, I don't know, it just intrigues me. Anything to do with people down through history intrigues me. What were their occupations? What did they do all day? Did they go for a walk through the countryside and think, oh, I'm going to go for a walk today? Or did they just spend all their lives working? So whoever those people were, they lived in here at the top of the hill, which makes sense. And you can see the big round barrow over there, other one over there. And in fact we can see more evidence of it now, because here are the earthworks. So this is the rampart and ditch which surrounded the settlement. I'm pretty well in the middle of the Cursus at this point, and it stretches away where my walking pole is to the edge of the trees in the distance. It skirts around there, so its secrets remain, because from here you can't actually see any evidence. But it's worth taking the detour anyway, because it's such a lovely view. Now we need to head back. And we'll carry on to Wimborne St Giles. Well, we've made our way back to Ackling Dyke. Just about come into the woods again. Interesting detour that was. John Ironmonger again. Right, now we are back on track, heading out the other side. It's a lovely open area here, but it is a shame really to see this. There was a time when I guess there would have been loads of hedgerows all around here, small fields, all separated by hedgerows, full of wildlife. And now it's just one big open area. There is a nice hedge on our left, but either side of that it's just open pasture land, well, not pasture land, arable land I should say. And it's definitely a big loss for wildlife, I'd say. Our wildlife is declining so much, and well, who knows how much of that is to do with loss of habitat, hedgerows and things. It's got to have affected it. I'm now starting to drop off of Harley Down, and I'm dropping down into a place which is close to my heart, and I'm really interested to see what this is like now. If you follow my blog, the DorsetRambler.com, you might know what I'm talking about, because I have put up several blog posts about this, but I've never put up a video. So I'm dropping down into a place called All Hallows. All Hallows is a village, or was a village I suppose, a mile or so away from another village known as St Giles, which has now become Wimborne St Giles. So Wimborne St Giles would be the main village. All Hallows now is a kind of almost kind of part of Wimborne St Giles. But back in the day, originally, All Hallows was the main village. All Hallows had a full church in the middle of the village. Wimborne, or St Giles as it was known then, had just what was effectively a chapel of ease. In 1672, the first Earl of Shaftesbury, whose seat is at St Giles House, in fact still is at St Giles House, he put in an application to amalgamate the two villages of St Giles and All Hallows, and it was agreed. So 70 years later, basically the Church of All Hallows was demolished and a grander church was built in Wimborne St Giles, in part using some of the stone from the All Hallows church, and thus Wimborne St Giles became main village, and the heart effectively was torn out really of All Hallows as a village. And the reason he did this was because the new church is actually very close to his ancestral home, St Giles House. So that's the background to this. But just down the road here is where the church was, and the cemetery of All Hallows Church, and that's what I want to come and see. There are still some cottages here, as you can see, and the farmhouse is still here, All Hallows Farm. That was quite a big employer back in the day. The cemetery is just down here in the trees, and I'll tell you the story behind that in just a moment. And believe it or not, this is the cemetery. Oh dear. That is sad to see. I mean, I love wildlife and I love cemeteries being left wild, but it's a shame to see this one so badly overgrown. I don't even know whether I can get into the cemetery, to be honest. So I can get an entrance down here. So the story behind this is that many years ago, and bearing in mind I'd probably walked past this hundreds of times and never even known it was a graveyard, I discovered this and I explored it and found there are gravestones in amongst this lot. I don't even know whether I can see any gravestones, to be honest, at the moment. Anyway, I was so disappointed to find this so badly overgrown that I was inspired to write a poem which I called Who Cares? And I'll read it in just a second. But someone read it online. It was on my blog, and they were inspired by it. A guy named Pete, he was inspired by it to come out, explore, find the graveyard, explore it, and it was, I think it might have been COVID year, he came out with his tools and he cleared all of this undergrowth and revealed the gravestones. One there, some more over there, I can barely get to, but he cleared all of this, and on the back of that also EDAS, East Dorset's Antiquarian Society, got involved, and they came out here and did an archaeological dig, because there was absolutely no evidence of the church, where the church was, and there's nothing online, nothing seemed to indicate where the church was. So they did a dig, discovered the foundations of the church, and I've got pictures, aerial pictures and on the ground pictures, which I will put up. And so effectively they found the church, and it was beautifully clear, and I was so pleased that my poem that I wrote inspired someone to come and clear it and do the archaeological dig and uncover some really interesting gravestones. And now it's been completely swamped again, and I find that quite sad. I say I like a wildlife graveyard, but even wildlife graveyards need managing. Anyway, let me see if I can get any further in, because there's some really interesting gravestones here. Well, in all honesty, I can't get any further in. It's just too dense, which is really sad, I think. So I'll read the poem I wrote. I called it "Who Cares?" Faceless names upon the stone, no one knows, they are gone, ashes to ashes, no one there. Does anyone care? Loved ones once, when alive, but all too soon their time to die, leaving this earth with mourners there, people around to care. Generations past, all forgot, no one now tends their final plot, overgrown and in disrepair. Does anyone care? Who cares? Well, I couldn't even get in to see many of the gravestones in there. It's just too many brambles and stinging nettles. I'd have got stung to pieces. It's impossible to get through it. So we will have to leave All Hallows, sadly, completely back to how, in fact, worse a state than it was when I first found it and wrote that poem. So I'll have to make do with putting up some pictures in this video so you can see what it was like. But I can read one or two of the inscriptions that were on the gravestones that I found in the graveyard, and that's what it's about. I think it's about people these were people, hard workers, and where are they? That's the thing which kind of resonates with me, really. It was a village that was their home. They worked at the farm. A lot of them probably worked at the farm anyway, and basically the heart of the village was torn out, and that is kind of symptomatic almost. It seems to me that the graveyard is almost symptomatic of the village that was. The noise, incidentally, is coming from the watercress beds which are behind All Hallows graveyard. But I'll read a couple of the inscriptions because these really resonated with me. So the first one is a man called John Rideout, and his headstone says, "To the memory of John Rideout, who died February the 22nd 1862 from injuries received by a wagon running over him, aged 58 years. So I did some research into John Rideout, and he was in fact a carter, worked at All Hallows farm. So it seems like his own wagon, he got caught underneath his own wagon somehow, and he was died and buried. And his headstone, because obviously they were poor people, often wouldn't have had headstones, but he's got a headstone that was put up by his employers. So he worked for them, I think, for 36 years or something. So I guess he must have been a valued employee for them to do that for him. But that's the kind of thing that triggers me, because I want to know who was John Rideout. What was he like? What was his life like? In fact, John Rideout's headstone continues. This stone is erected by Mr. Pardy, in whose father's service, as well as his own, he was for 36 years a true and faithful carter. So he was obviously a valued member of the farm. And here's another one. This is Prudence Barfoot. In memory of Prudence Barfoot of Woodlands, aged 12 years, a humble and teachable, affectionate and grateful child, belonging to the St Giles National School, whose death was occasioned by her clothes catching fire, April 1829. So that kind of triggers thoughts in your head, doesn't it? 12-year-old whose clothes caught fire, presumably. I don't know, there's no other information on the headstone, but presumably the cottage fire was probably, and maybe she got too close or something, who knows. It's these real life stories, I think, that are more fascinating, more interesting, and more, I don't know, kind of get to you somehow. And of course the sad thing is that these everyday folk, we know very little about them. The people like the Earls of Shaftesbury and those who are kind of upper class, there's lots of information about them online and, you know, down through the ages in history. But the everyday folk, they are here, they go, and who knows, who remembers, who cares, in fact, to quote my poem. There are one or two grander tombs in that graveyard. Notably, one of them was Lady Harriet Ashley Cooper. But there are others there as well, buried underneath that undergrowth. But Ashley Cooper is of course the name of the Earl of Shaftesbury. So the current Earl of Shaftesbury is the 12th Earl. So there's been 12 Earls down through the ages. They have all been either Ashleys or Coopers or Ashley Coopers. And St Giles House has been in that family, the Ashley stroke Cooper stroke Ashley Cooper family, since 1418. The ownership has not changed by sale since the Norman Conquest, and the title of the Earl of Shaftesbury has been in place since the 17th century. The river, incidentally, is a tributary of the River Allen. But now, another interesting fact about the Earl of Shaftesbury is that there have been 12, like I said, from the 12th. 10 of those 12 have been Anthony Ashley Coopers. Obviously a tradition of the oldest son being given same name as the father. There are two exceptions, one of which is actually the current, the incumbent Earl of Shaftesbury, who's actually Nicholas, known I think in the village as Nick. Anyway, the reason he is not Anthony is because his brother, he had an older brother that inherited, and he was Anthony Ashley Cooper, and sadly when he was visiting Nicholas in New York, because Nick used to live in New York, the older brother died of a heart attack, and so the second brother inherited. So across here is the new church, or the church at Wimborne St Giles, built with a stone from All Hallows. And to put a more positive spin on All Hallows, although it's really sad that after all the work that went into reveal the gravestones and the stories and the church outline and so on, it is good, isn't it, that nature takes over when man leaves things alone. And I do like that, like this here. It's good to see nature active, I think, even though I feel sad about it after all the effort that went into All Hallows. Anyway, we're at Wimborne St Giles now. We have moved on. And this is the new church, built when All Hallows was demolished. St Giles Church dates back to medieval times. The current church was built in the 18th century by the Bastard brothers of Blandford in early Georgian style. There are a number of ornate memorials and tombs, the most notable of these being the tomb of Sir Anthony Ashley. It has been remodelled a number of times, most notably in the early 20th century when, following a catastrophic fire, it was redesigned by Sir John Ninian Comper. Well, that was the inside. A bit difficult to film it because there's work going on in there. Looks like they're restoring some of the monuments, I think, and memorials. So they've got power tools and things going in there. Anyway, we're going to have a little detour up here. I still haven't had lunch yet. It's going to be a late Dorset Rambler lunch. And I'm just going to follow this footpath a short distance to see if we can get a view of St Giles House before we stop for lunch. Well, doesn't look as if we can see the house. I guess probably easier in winter. At the moment all the foliage is out, so the house is kind of concealed. But it looks a lot better than it used to. I think when the current Earl inherited it, I think it was kind of, it had had some years of being left to run down a bit, so he's done what appears to be an amazing job turning it round and kind of restoring it. It's a shame we can't actually get to see it. Never mind, it's a lovely footpath through here anyway. I really like walking this. This is the other thing that was built, I think, similar time to the church, and it's the almshouses. Hopefully you can hear me because there's somebody mowing the lawn out here now. I love these almshouses, very pretty. I've just been talking to a couple who were walking one of the paths, took a wrong turn and ended up walking through the grounds of St Giles House. I was just saying how beautiful it is in there. Let's try that myself. I get away with it. Having grey hair, I just blame a senior moment, misread the map or something. Anyway, I'm going to stop here on this little seat for a spot of lunch. a lovely spot for lunch back there. Shame about the mower going, but never mind. But we've got to hit the road and crack on. So we're out of town again. We've left Wimborne St Giles behind. And we are now heading along a couple of nice tracks. Yeah, I quite like this stretch, which will take us to the end of the village of Gussage All Saints, and then we'll walk the length of the village virtually. So we are still en route for Gussage All Saints, and this is a lovely little lane to walk through, and it's one that intrigues me. It's actually got a name. This is Brockington Lane, and I really enjoy walking it, and it intrigues me that it's got a name. It's one of those, I had one in the last video, didn't we? It's called Bowling Green Lane or something like that, I think it was called, out Pentridge Way. And yeah, why, I mean, I suppose back in the day it probably was a lane. It's a footpath now, of course, but I guess it would have been a lane in the old days. And I don't know, horse and cart probably come along here maybe. But yeah, fascinates me, these places, especially when they have names. Why is it called that? Brockington Lane. Kind of overgrown a little bit more since I was here last, as you can see. You have to squeeze through. I just remembered something else about St Giles House. That's just come back to me. The statue in London, Eros, was put up in memory of, or in recognition of, the Earl of Shaftesbury, and I have forgotten which one. Is it the 8th, 7th? Can't remember which one, but one of the Earls of Shaftesbury is famous for being philanthropic, and the statue of Eros was put up for him, and I believe it was meant to point, or does point, towards St Giles House. And I'm fairly sure I remember correctly as well that there is a mini Eros in the grounds of St Giles House as well. So yes, another interesting fact. And in fact, when I was at school, I remember each class was divided into 4 houses, and I remember I was in Shaftesbury House, named after Lord Shaftesbury. This is another lovely spot. This is a tributary of the River Allen. The River Allen is one of those rare chalk streams, main river through this part, and this, in the same way as the one down the Gussage Valley, is a tributary of that lovely spot. Oh, we've come out onto the road that will lead us back to Gussage. This place is interesting in here, and it's changed. The place up here is called Bowerswain. I think it was a farm, but interestingly, this used to be an airfield. It was a private airfield belonging to the house, but obviously looking at that, it's no longer used as an airfield. I chatted to the owner once. He was older than me and he had a plane, and that was his airfield, and but he'd reached, I think, the age where he wasn't flying anymore, but he kept the airfield there because he used to have friends who did fly. So when his friends came round, they would fly round and land on his airfield. How cool is that? Invite your friends round and they fly in to visit you. But it's changed now, and this has changed as well. This was one of the best roadside wayside shop. Can't call it a shop, can you? Used to do all manner of chutneys, all strange chutneys and jams and things, but it's gone. Usually when I walk this way, well, I quite often pick up a jar of chutney or something, homemade. It's all made in the cottage off to the left, but it's gone. So maybe the person isn't living there anymore. Sad, isn't it? Things do change, don't they? Hey ho. And so we reach Gussage All Saints. And a place called Amen Corner. So, what does Amen Corner bring to mind for you? For me, it brings to mind, bend me, shape me any way you want me, long as you love me, it's alright. I know what you're thinking, don't give up the day job. That's what I always think of though, when I see that Amen Corner. The rock band from, crumbs, 60s, were they? Did they go into the 70s? I remember them, I don't remember when. Anyway, it's nothing to do with the rock band anyway, of course. Amen Corner is kind of fairly often used. Just means it's kind of the end of the village. Hence, Amen. Kind of should be the other end of the village really, because that's where the church is. So we are going to walk the length of the village from one end to the other. Hi. And a lovely village it is too. And this is one of the success stories of this village. You might have seen on the sign back there, at one point showed the Drovers, and that's what that pub was called, the Drovers. They obviously haven't changed the sign yet, because it's changed its name now. Fact was, the pub was due to close. The brewery wanted to pull out, and they wanted to sell it or convert the pub to accommodation, housing, house. Probably had one big house, was it? I can't remember. Anyway, the villagers didn't want it to close, so they got a campaign together, raised sufficient money and possibly borrowed some, I can't remember. Anyway, whatever. And they managed to buy the pub from the brewery, and it's now open again. It has been now for a few years. This goes back a few years now, but they've managed to keep it going as a community asset. Sometimes since I've been there, actually, I don't think I've been there since it changed its name, so I must try it again one day. But it's nice because it's a lovely village, and quite nice if you're in a village and you've got your own pub. It's actually a very quiet village when I walk through, or always seems to be. But I was talking to a resident once through here, and they said it's not quiet at 7:30 in the morning when everybody's going off to work, because I'm guessing it's a kind of commuter village possibly. So yeah, it gets quite busy then when everybody's going out of the village. There are some lovely cottages here. It's unfortunately clouded over quite heavily now. Never mind, I've had most of the day in sunshine, so I'm not complaining. So Gussage All Saints actually get its name, well, Gussage comes from the old word geis or geisy or something like that, which means water breaking forth, i.e. a kind of water course, and that obviously refers to the stream, the tributary of the River Allen that runs through the valley. And All Saints is the dedication of the church. But it's also been known as Lower Gussage because there are actually 3 Gussages. This is the southernmost one. There's Gussage St Michael and Gussage St Andrew further up the valley. Both again named by their church dedication, I think. And the All Saints Church is just up here. And there's a distinctive sound of a buzzard just going overhead. And this is All Saints Church, Gussage. It's a lovely, kind of picturesque, clean church. I don't know, something pleasing about the way this church is designed, with its tower on the side above the porch. It's mostly 14th century, like a lot of churches that had a makeover in Victorian times, but Victorians, who are notorious for basically screwing up renovations and making a right pig's ear of it with most buildings, actually did a good job on this one. So it still looks 14th century and it's maintained its pleasant appearance. But we will see if we can go inside it. And this is virtually the end of the walk, or nearly. All Saints Church at Gussage dates from the 14th and 15th century, being built in decorated style. It was sensitively restored in Victorian times. In the north wall is what appears to be an Easter sepulchre, a rarity in English churches. However, this was found to contain a skeleton, so in fact appears to be a tomb. The church contains a number of piscinas used for washing of sacramental vessels. This suggests that there was at one time a number of altars. The font dates from Norman times. Well, we've reached the end of another amazing day's walking. It's been such a good day again. I know I say that at the end of every walk, but it seriously is. It's been fantastic again today. Done some amazing footpaths, seen some amazing views, passed lots of interest again. I know a lot of it's been kind of ancient history today, I suppose, with Ackling Dyke and the Cursus and burial mounds and settlements in enclosures, and maybe ancient history is not everybody's cup of tea, but I hope you find it interesting. I just love exploring anything, and yeah, it was really good to go past my graveyard at All Hallows. Sad to see the way it's overgrown again in some ways, after my original poem sparked a complete change. Never mind, it enabled it to reveal its secrets, where the church was and some of the residents of the village in the past, their gravestones, etc. It revealed a lot about All Hallows graveyard, and maybe now it's right that nature takes it over again, and that is a good thing, that nature takes over when man moves away, because I do like a wild churchyard, I have to say. This is a little bit like it here. It's got its wild patches, and I like that. My garden's a bit like that, not totally overgrown, I have to say. Wild, but without being totally overgrown. Anyway, it's been a fantastic day. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've absolutely loved it. We've done about 10.5 miles or so, so I'm already looking forward to the next one. So thanks for coming with me again. It's been great. But for now, this is me, the Dorset Rambler, saying until next time.